حول إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام التحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We began the tafsir of Surah An-Nas last night, where we ended up, we were talking about the story of the reason for why the surah was revealed, or at least this plus Surah Al-Falaq. The story about a Jewish man casting a spell on Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Rasulullah then falling ill. And this surah was then sent down, and Jibreel came and told him about this. And along with Amir al-Mu'mineen, who had found the spell in a well, this was something that had knots tied on it. Rasulullah would recite one of the ayat, and then Amir al-Mu'mineen would untie one of the knots. And then after that, 11 of them were undone, and then Rasulullah was healed. So we mentioned last night that although this story is reported in both Sunni and Shia books, some Shia ulama, they object to it. They say, how could Allah's divine messenger, his perfect human being, right, his final, Rasul, how could he be subject to spells and magic and sihr and something like that? And we shared the ayat, one of the examples of the ayat that they use, that they say, no, in the Quran it says he cannot be mashhur. He cannot be subject to sihr and black magic. So, what do we understand from there? Now, this is with all due respect, obviously. We're just sharing the different opinions that exist among the ulama. We said that Alama Tabatabai, Qaddasallahu Sirru, and Al-Mizan, and many other mufassirin, like Nasir Makarim Shirazi, Hafidhahullah, them and many others, they say, no, what's wrong with the possibility of Rasulullah being affected by magic? There's nothing that's clear in the Quran or riwayat which says that Rasulullah is not subject to magic or any of the Ahlul Bayt. But they do have to comment on these ayat. So what Alaman mentions in Al-Mizan, he says, look, the soul, the heart, and the mind of Rasulullah are protected. And specifically when it comes to, tabyin and tibyan. When it comes to tabligh and explaining the Quran and the deen. Okay, he's protected there. We know that. But when it comes to physical ailments, there's no guaranteed protection for that. There's no reason that he cannot become sick, as he became sick many times in his life. And the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam, we all know they became sick over and over again as well too. So there's nothing within the Quran or riwayat which mention that they cannot be sick because of some divine protection. No, that's not the case. And that's exactly what the story is saying, is that this spell was cast and Rasulullah became sick because of it. So there's nothing that is against the Quran or against any of the principles in the riwayat. No. So mashur, some ulama say, look, this specific meaning has to do with being possessed. Or another way of describing mashur is majnoon. So majnoon, right, when we think about majnoon, we think of somebody just being crazy. Majnoon shares the same root as jinn. Meaning that back then, when somebody was possessed, it meant that somebody had, either a jinn had come onto them, or somebody, a magician, a dark magician, sorcerer, whatever, a sorceress, had taken control of a jinn and possessed somebody else with it. So that's what majnoon literally means, is somebody has become possessed by a jinn. So that's what many of them were accusing Rasulullah of, that he's become possessed, that's why he's saying these crazy things, na'udhu billah. So the Quran is rejecting that no, he's not majnoon, he's not possessed, he's not mashhur. There's no spell that was cast on him that made him demonically or possessed by jinn, nothing like that. Just as we were saying though, yes, he can be afflicted by physical ailments. There's nothing wrong with that though, right? And these surahs, and the reason why they were revealed is the example of that, is that he became many times sick in his life. And this example, because it was the result of black magic, of a spell, these two surahs were revealed, recited, and then were able to heal him. And we have other examples of how even Rasulullah himself used this surah and these surahs, right? The Mu'awwidhatayn. That, for example, for Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein, alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa. When they were younger, he used to recite it around them too, for their protection. Right? Some say that he would even make a ta'weed for them, as we mentioned in the riwayah last night as well, to keep them protected from physical ailments or things like that too. Right? So this was a practice that, according to some riwayat, he himself engaged in. So this is nothing out of the ordinary. Now, one point, if you remember, one of the riwayat, Rasulullah had said that this surah, or these two surahs that have been revealed, ma unzila mithluhuma. Nothing else has been revealed like them. Now, what makes these two surahs so special? Why would Rasulullah say that these are unique amongst all the other 112 surahs in the Quran? Right? There are plenty of other short surahs. There are plenty of other surahs which talk about Allah's attributes, which these surahs do. Right? There are other surahs which address magic, so that's nothing new. What Allama Tabatabai mentions is that the possible reason why Rasulullah is saying that there's no other surahs like this is because these two were specifically revealed for the protection and safety of Rasulullah. No other surahs were revealed for that reason alone. Every other surah has its own particular thing. Usually, especially the longer ones, have multiple things inside, right? There's legal issues and ahkam. There's theological issues. There's history, discussions about previous prophets. So there's a lot of things going on there. In some of the other shorter surahs of the Quran, in the 30th juz, they're usually reminders, they're examples, they talk about hellfire, very simple things. But these two surahs, according to this explanation by Allama Tabatabai, is that these two surahs are the only ones which were specifically revealed as protection du'as. That's it. They're protective surahs. And that's why many of us know that either all four of the Qul surahs, or at least these two, we are in the habit of reciting them as a sense and place for practice. Inshallah ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The first question that we had asked before we ended last night as well. This surah, along with many others, starts with the word Qul. And the word Qul comes many other places in the Quran as well. So why? We all know, the Quran was revealed, right? It came through Jibreel and then to Rasulullah. So why would Allah say, well, tell them that I'm the one who's saying it? Well, those who are around him at that time, shouldn't they just assume that this is Allah or Jibreel saying it? Why would Allah have to emphasize that, no, tell them that I'm saying it? What ulama mentioned is that there's three possible reasons for this, right? There's many, but at least three very famous reasons. The overarching principle is that it's an emphasis on the fact that Allah is the one who's directly doing the addressing here. The other ayat of the Quran, maybe it wasn't important that people thought about Allah directly addressing, right, whoever was listening or whoever is reading. Maybe it wasn't important for them to realize that Rasulullah was just transmitting information. But in certain situations, Allah needs to emphasize that, hey, do not keep your eyes and ears focused on Rasul, on my messenger. This has to come back towards me, Allah. Meaning that there was a few theological issues. One, and this happened back then, and this unfortunately still happens to this day amongst some minority groups. People think that the words of the Quran are not the words of Allah, not kalam Allah. They think that it's kalam Rasul. They think that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was inspired by Allah, and then he put whatever he got inspired with into his own words. That's what some people think. The Quran is from Rasulullah, not from Allah. And there's a lot of these weird modern day, again, so-called, I don't want to call them scholars, but speakers who are out there, who have this idea that, yeah, that's how we modernize the Quran. That back then, Rasulullah interpreted things for that time, and now we, with our perfect intellects and perfected intellects, have to reinterpret the Quran for today. And Allah has given us that ability with our aql, which is completely nonsensical. That's not true at all. So this idea of qul was an emphasis to those back then who thought that this was just Muhammad making it up on his own, and an emphasis to those who still have that idea today. They say, no, Allah is specifically saying, hey, put the word qul in there so they get a reminder that I am the one who's saying this, not you, Muhammad, and not Jibreel. This is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two is also, okay, maybe we can assume that everything comes from Allah. But there's another emphasis too. Sometimes, you know what happens? When we see a certain issue in society, we have a problem with somebody. Those who are, a little extra religious, whenever they have a problem with somebody, what they like to do is they grab an ayah of the Quran, they use it against somebody, right? They take something out of context, right? Like maybe something about the way that somebody prays, وَيْلُ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, right? They just toss this ayah then. They'll grab any of these ayat of the Quran and then use it against somebody, as if the Quran was specifically revealed for their own personal battles. No, that's not the case. That same idea existed amongst the Arabs back then too. They thought that, hey, whenever this guy Muhammad thinks, he's going to just tell us whatever ayat he feels like. So many times, just like this time, many times Allah says, no, use this word qul. So the emphasis is that Allah, I'm the one who announces it when I want to. This is my addressing you. This is not my Rasul telling you whenever he wants. So now there's two aspects that Allah is emphasizing. The what that is being said is from Allah, and the when to say it is also from Allah too. Both of these things are being directed from Allah. It's not in the hands, not in the mind of the Rasul. It's not Rasulullah's creation. He was purely just doing whatever Allah told him to, right? That's the whole point of wahi itself. So that whenever somebody had a problem or an issue, they would ask a question. Many times Rasulullah would just stay silent. Right? They'd come to him with a problem and he would wait for wahi, he would wait for revelation, and then he'd say, قُل لِل, etc. قُل لِل, whatever, كافرون or لِل muslimin or لِل insan. And then he'd say, okay, this is what Allah has told me to reveal to you. And that would be a direct response to many individuals. So the word qul in that instance was to say that it's Allah who's directly responding. It's not my Rasul who's making this up as he's going along, choosing the time and place to do that. And then of course the third and final point is that all of this was just to solidify the whole point of Risala. The very idea of being a messenger. The idea of a messenger is Rasulullah is just taking whatever he's been gifted from Allah and bringing it to the people. That's it. I mean, yes, he has a high maqam. We're not trying to undermine or do anything to that. But at the same time, people kept pointing fingers at him directly, saying, why aren't you doing this? Why are you like this? X, Y, Z. And you're saying, I'm just a Rasul. I'm just a messenger. If you have a problem, you take it up with Allah. He's the creator. He's the khaliq. Why are you, getting angry with me about this? If you don't like something in the deen, I didn't make this up. And this happened all the way up until Ghadir. Right? When the appointment was announced of Mawla Ali, when it was announced, there was somebody that day, the same exact day, they said, what is going on here? Like, Muhammad, are you making this up as you go along? Did you decide to make your cousin-in-law the wali after you? Is this your own personal thing? And he said, Wallah, no, I don't make up anything at all in this deen. This is a divine appointment. This is coming from Allah. It's not coming from me. And then that person, and it's addressed in the Quran, that person said, okay, if this is from Allah, then, may I be killed. And what happened is a rock came down from the heavens and struck him on that day, on the day of Ghadir, just for his defiance there. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this was just to finish up the point about why qul. One other small minor point as well, just in terms of our pronunciation, which is important, in this month where we're trying to recite more Quran, which is wonderful. It's also good to not just recite more, but to see if we can correct and improve upon our makharij, and our pronunciation a little bit as well too. Some individuals, whether Arab or not, sometimes we make some mistakes or we're a little bit lax in the way that we recite. So for this word specifically, right, there's many words, many examples, but this one sometimes, right, even people who are born speaking, Arabic, instead of saying qul, they'll say kul. And it's very, very important that we recognize many times, if we start swapping sounds, we're literally swapping letters. If we swap letters, that means we're swapping meanings. The meaning is different. Kul does not mean the same thing as qul. Qul means say or speak, right? It's a command. What does kul mean? Kul can have technically two different meanings. Kul, as in like every or all, right? Like kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut, right? Every nafs, every soul will taste death. And it can also mean what? It can be a command too for what? To eat, right? So you might misinterpret this as like, Allah's commanding us in the month of Ramadan to eat. No, that's not. So don't just say kul like that. Allah's not telling Rasulullah to eat. Qul is to speak, right? So it's good to try to make sure. It might be tough for those of us who maybe haven't trained that way, but we can try a little bit, and inshallah, Allah will make it easier for us, right? Inshallah ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So now let's go on to the next point. This surah, these two surahs are about protection and refuge, right? قُلْ أَعُوذُ. I seek protection and refuge. The first question that we asked last night, or the second question rather, was what's the difference between seeking hifadha, hifd, versus ista'adha, or a'udhu, right? I seek protection, refuge. They both mean protection and refuge, but there's a slight nuance and difference. When it comes to hifd and hifadha, that is typically, generally speaking, a situation where sometimes I'll seek, outside recourse, like somebody else help me out, or maybe I can seek protection myself too. It doesn't really make a difference. It's a very general form of protection. When it comes to a'adh and ista'adha and saying a'udhu billah, things like that, when a person engages in this is saying that I need protection because I am unable to do this myself. I have zero power and zero ability. I am completely faqir. I'm completely in need of somebody or something else protecting me. That's why the word usually they use is refuge, not protection. Because protection, technically, people can do it on their own for different things, right? Okay, I can protect myself. But you can't seek refuge in yourself. Refuge, when you think about that word, right, even in the English context, somebody seeks refuge to a larger, bigger, more powerful thing. Right? Like the common usage is that they seek refuge when people, in the laws, I don't know how much they apply in the Western world anymore, but when people used to run away from authorities, they used to run inside churches because that was a place of refuge and authorities were not allowed to go inside a church. So they'd commit a crime and they'd go run inside the church and hide away from cops over there, right? So they'd be seeking refuge, that way. So whenever a person feels weak, they feel threatened, that's when they want to go and seek that protection, that refuge. Alama says that there are three possible sources that are mentioned in this ayah, and this applies to everybody. Three different sources where we could seek protection and refuge from. One is any person that we have this intimate, close connection with that manages affairs, that nurtures us, that's like a caretaker for us. So the best and easiest example for most people is a parent for a kid. For every child, their parent is that nurturer and that caretaker. Whenever a young child is feeling stranger danger, right? They're feeling shy, they're feeling scared, what do? They run to their mother or father, right? They grab and hold onto their legs for protection, right? They're scared and they hide their face and they bury inside because they think that this is my nurturer, my caretaker, they're going to protect me from something I can't protect myself from. So that's one source that people go to. The second is when somebody goes to some sort of authority, some sort of power, somebody with the ability to exert authority, power, and control. So sometimes when we deal with issues, right, somebody's bothering you, something's dangerous, you feel threatened, you might just call 911 and ask for the police, right? Because you can't do it yourself. I need the police to come and take care of things. You might do something like that, right? Or a person might have to seek recourse by going to a court of law, right? Hiring a lawyer, you go to court and see if the court can take care of an issue for you, for example. And the final thing is any sort of object of worship. Any sort of worship. It doesn't have to be God or Allah. Although for anybody who's a monotheist, obviously they seek protection from their God. But even from people who are idol worshippers, they seek protection from any of their idols, right? Nowadays, people, they seek some level of protection and refuge and solace from what? Celebrities, influencers, people like that, right? They will message people and say, I need advice, I don't know what to do. And they ask people for advice like that. People that they have no relationship whatsoever, but because they literally worship them, they ask them for information about how to improve their life, how to, which way to go in their life. And unfortunately, in the modern world too, now people have even left behind looking to somebody else. Now they say, you know what? I am my own source of refuge and protection. Because we have made our own selves our idols, right? Allah's addressed it before too. People in this age, we have made ourselves the idol. We are worshiping ourselves. I don't need any, fancy gurus. I don't need some scholar. I don't need a God. I don't need a religion. I don't need some scientist telling me what to do. I don't need a government. I need none of this. I'll figure it out myself. I'll take care of myself. I'm in charge of myself. I know what to do. Nobody else has the right to tell me what to do. I have self-autonomy. Right? This is a very post-modern sort of issue that's happening among people. They don't want anybody else telling them, what to do. Now, who are you to tell me? All right? And there are authorities that they're supposed to do that, but some people have become so stubborn and so arrogant, they don't want anybody telling them anything about what to do. So over here, all of these three levels are mentioned in this surah, right? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, so Rabb, that nurture and caretaker. Malik النَّاسِ, the one with authority, power, and control. And Ilah النَّاسِ, the one that is worthy of worship, the Ilah, the God. So all three of these factors converge in Allah. And that's why Allah is mentioning that all of you might be doing this separately, but I, Allah, am all three of these things. This is why I am worth more to seek refuge from than anything else and anybody else. Because all these three faculties and attributes lie in me. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If a Muslim might be reading this and say, yeah, obviously I believe in all of this. Allah is my Rabb, right? He's my nurturer, my caretaker. I believe in Him as the Malik, right? And Malik, He's the authority and owner, possessor of power. I get that. And obviously, I only worship Him. So He's my Ilah, He's Allah, He's Al-Ilah. Of course, I'm the one, I worship Him and nobody else. So, what do I have to reflect on in this ayah? In a practical sense, sometimes we might believe in this stuff in our mind, but in action, we actually don't follow through on all of these things. Even though we're supposed to say that Allah is the one who manages our day-to-day life, He is our source of control and power and authority and legislation, and He is a source where we should be worshiping Him. Okay. But sometimes things take place in our day-to-day life where we have all that theoretical stuff and we just toss it to the side. There are many Muslims out there that, for example, whenever they have an issue with another Muslim, rather than try to sit down and discuss it according to Islamic ahkam, according to Islamic akhlaqi principles, what do? I'm going to go to the court right away. I'm going to go call the police. Rather than using the principles, the divine principles that we've been given, I'm going to go find somebody else to go take care of this. It's sad how many individuals, even unfortunately, sometimes Islamic centers do these things too, where they have issues, right? Alhamdulillah, something like that has never happened here from what I understand. But unfortunately, many other places, legal issues, contractual issues, arguments, lawyers battling things out, contractual debates, hiring lawyers, right? Paying all this money, wasting all this money, having to sit in court, battling, battle. It hits the newspapers and people are laughing at Muslims like, what are these guys doing? Arguing with each other about their center politics and things like that. How ridiculous. It's sad. It's really sad that Muslims are doing things like that. So they're calling Allah, right? Their Rabb, their Malik, their Ilah, but they're turning to other people for authority. There are many Muslims who are like, I know a marja is a supreme authority in law, but I don't care what they say. I know that there are ulama who have this wilayah and authority. I don't care what they say. So all of this really means, okay, yeah, I know Allah created me and He managed me and all this stuff, sure. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to do whatever I feel like. I don't care if Allah set up a hierarchy. I don't care if He's created any laws. It doesn't apply to me. I'll do whatever I feel like. So then you're not seeking protection from Allah. Seeking protection from Allah is not just something verbal. It's not just, okay, Allah protect me. Allah said, I gave you a system of protection. I gave you the surahs, very simply, but I also gave you a sharia, which is also a form of physical and spiritual protection as well too. I gave you Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that you follow as guidance, and the Quran as guidance, as taqalain, the two that go together. I gave you ulama who carry on those teachings afterwards and have brought it down to you. All this stuff, Allah is saying, I've gifted it to you and I've set it up to you as a system of hidayah, and you want to go a different direction, fine, but then you're not protected anymore. I've told you, get in this car and drive on this side of the road, this speed limit. And people say, well, I'm going to go on the other side of the road. Okay, but then you can't guarantee the protection anymore, right? If you don't want to obey the rules and obey the laws, then there's a chance you could get harmed and damaged because of something like that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We'll do one more point and then we'll end for tonight. Why this order? Why mention Rabb, then Malik, then Ilah? Couldn't have been any other order. If they're all attributes of Allah, why specifically that order? You might just say, Allah just haphazardly did that. We know better than that. Allah, if He chooses a specific order, He chose it for a good reason. There's hikmah, there's a wisdom behind that. So our mufassirin give us a few possible reasons. They say, one, it's because based on the natural way that we human beings, the way that we connect to anybody and anything, the things that we are closest to first, that's the way that we connect. Meaning, whoever is the person that's providing me things for my day-to-day life right in front of me, that's my manager, my caretaker, my nurturer, I'm going to develop a connection with them first. So we connect with Allah as a Rabb before anything else, right? Allah, you've given me this breath that I have every day. You've allowed me to live and survive. The food that I have, alhamdulillah, we're provided by the sponsors over here to be able to eat every night and break our fast together. The risk that we are given just to make it to the center and do whatever we can. So that personal relationship, Allah is addressing that first, saying, that's what you are closest to because I know that that's what you are. That's how you can connect with me the closest first. And then after that, you're a bit distanced from me when you recognize my power and my authority. When you think of somebody as an authority figure, just having control and ownership, there's not always that closeness to them. Do you feel close to cops, to the government? No, nobody does, right? Especially nowadays, nobody feels close to cops anymore, right? So no, we don't have that closeness to them. Even if you have a family member that's part of a police force, you don't feel that close to them too, right? Except when they let you off, give you a warning and they can help you out get out of tickets. That's the only time, right? Otherwise, who really cares? But when somebody has power, authority, even when in corporations they try to make you a family, it doesn't work, right? Like, look, you have this sort of control and authority over me. You're my boss, you're my manager, so you're a bit separate from me, right? There's a bit of a distance. I'll respect you to some degree, as long as my paycheck keeps coming in, but you're not as close to me as somebody who's actually taking care of me every single day, right? So that's now a bit of a distance. And that most distant area is what? Is when we talk about ilah, somebody or something that's worshipped. Because worship is something that we are super distanced from. If Allah was not Rabb for us, not taking care of us every single day, if He wasn't owning and controlling and managing various affairs with His authority, if He was just saying that, no, just worship me, forget me taking care of you, just worship me. How much would we actually worship in the first place? Most of us, our worship is transactional, right? Allah, because you've given me all of this, because you're taking care of me, you've given me this family and protected us and given me this and that, and also I hope that you do this for me, fine, I'll pray. Fine, I'll fast. Fine, I'll read the Quran. I'll do all this. Right? We're bartering with Him. This is a business deal. That's how many of us unfortunately are. Which Allah says is okay. He said, fine, you can do that. The base level, you can do that. That's okay. But at the highest level, because of that distance, when somebody recognizes that, no, that Allah that I need to worship, I have to worship Him just because He's worthy of worship. Not because He provides me things, not because He has owner and control and can put me in hellfire, but because He is the only one that's worthy of worship. That's what all these famous riwayat say. So another way of looking at these three levels is that all of these three levels of rububiyah, milkiyah or mulkiyah, and uluhiyah or ilahiyah, all these three different levels are different levels of spiritual connection to Allah. The first one is the easiest one because Allah provides, right? So I'm obeying Allah because He takes care of me. The second level, when He's the Malik, okay, I'm obeying you because you are the owner and master and I don't want to get in trouble. But at that third highest level, when somebody worships Allah, it's only because Allah, you are worthy of it, and that's it. I don't care if you give me rewards. I don't care if you put me in hellfire. I don't care if you reward me. I'm not concerned with any of that. I need to just worship you because you deserve it, and I love to worship you. That's that highest level that all of us, inshallah, could hopefully strive towards. And the final point is, why is an-nas repeated 3 times? And ulama say an-nas is repeated 3 times most likely because each of these attributes, even though all of them by themselves are talking about something great, each of them is a good enough reason for us to seek protection from Allah. Even if Allah was not all 3, even if He wasn't all 3, because He's at least one of these, He still is a source of protection, and we should still go and seek protection from Him. So He doesn't need to be all 3. Doesn't need to be Rabb, Malik, and Ilah. Even if He was just one of these things, just for the fact that He owns things, He has control and authority, just because He does manage our affairs and take care of us, and just because He is the only thing that is worthy of worship, that is why He is the only one that we should be seeking protection from. Inshallah, tomorrow night we'll try to wrap up this surah by mentioning the final point about this waswas, this idea of whispers, of evil inclinations and what it means, and why at the end it talks about jinn and insan in terms of these levels of whispers. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.